Welcome. My name is Linda Yost. I'm President of Human Resource Directions, and today our training is on zero tolerance of sexual harassment or any form of harassment whatsoever. And this is required employee training. So our program outline today will cover the notion of sexual harassment and why zero tolerance is so important. The expanded definition of sexual harassment, perpetrators, targets, locations, and stereotyping. The fact that retaliation is absolutely wrong and will not be tolerated in any form. We'll go over company policies on reporting and investigation, supervisor responsibility and onlooker duty, and that is a relatively newer obligation that each of you will have as an employee. We're going to look at U.S. and New York State local protections and remedies, and then we'll have a summary at the end, and we'll conclude with a Q&A review. So, why are we doing this at this moment in time? Well, if you've looked at the newspaper, if you've been online, you know that legislation is ever increasing. Litigation cases are absolutely imploding. We have each year protected classes that continue to grow and grow, and it is critically important that we address those issues. So, New York State has mandated that the policy is explained to each and every employee and that annual training is conducted, so everybody is well aware of that. All companies must ensure full compliance. Everyone must follow those policies, and that will help you too to protect yourself from any kind of lawsuit, because as you know, we live in a very litigious world today. So what exactly is the expanded definition of sexual harassment? And in this case, I think we do need to read a bit. Obviously, it is a form of sexual discrimination that is unlawful under federal, state, and local law as well. It includes harassment either on the basis of sex that's sexually driven or on the basis of sex that is not sexually driven, based on a self-identified or perceived sex, gender expression, gender identity, or the status of being transgender. So you can see that this is an expanded definition over what we have had before. It includes unwelcome conduct which is either sexual or non-sexual, but it exists toward that individual because of their sex. Now, when this conduct has the purpose of affecting or interfering with its individual's ability to do their work or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. And this can happen even if the person is not the intended target. It could be language, for example, that has nothing to do with the person around, but that is offensive to them just overhearing it. Conduct also could be made explicitly or implicitly a term or condition of employment or submission or rejection to sexual favors, any kind of condition of employment. All these fall under the expanded definition of sexual harassment in today's world. Now, there are two major types of harassment. The first falls under the category of hostile environment. Now, I want to explain, because this is a very overused term. If, for example, you're kind of hanging around doing nothing, and your boss comes up and says, hey, get going and get back to work, that is not a hostile work environment. Oftentimes employees can get that confused with this, but let me explain to you what a hostile work environment really is. Again, it could be any action described on one word, signs, jokes, pranks, intimidation, anything that you would do to someone because of or based on their sex. It could include pictures, posters, calendars, and today a lot of this is occurring, in social media, with your cell phone that you bring into work, maybe sharing photos, inappropriate gestures, or even on the computer. Be extraordinarily careful with your emails on the job, and when you bring your personal cell phone to work, make sure that you do not share anything of a sexual nature. Hostile actions can also include, really physical things like it go up to and including rape. But it can be pushing, shoving, touching, brushing up against someone, the usual things that we identify with that. But it also can include, and this is an important, I want to read this directly, it includes interfering with, destroying or damaging a person's workstation tools or equipment, or otherwise interfering with the individual's ability to perform their job by sabotaging their work through bullying, yelling, or name calling. So these are things that happen oftentimes in the workplace. It's indirect. A woman may be hired into a male-dominated part of the organization. They may not traditionally sexually harass her. They might just sabotage her. Maybe not help her as much with the training that she needs. Or, everybody else gets a bagel and she's excluded. All of these things fall into hostile environment. The second type of harassment is called quid pro quo. Now, this is a legal term, and it basically means I give you something and you give me something else in return. And so, that's not always a bad thing, but it is in this context. If you give me sex, maybe you can get promoted. Or if you don't give it to me, maybe you won't get promoted. Or if, maybe you want a little extra vacation time. Anytime that anyone is offered or granted better working conditions or opportunities in exchange for a sexual relationship, this falls into an illegal act. It is employment discrimination at its highest and will not be tolerated. So, on this topic, I want to be really clear. Who would fall into this category? Who possibly could be involved? Well, a perpetrator could be anyone. A target could be anyone. A location could be anywhere, and anyone can stereotype groups of people. So, to protect yourself, you do need to understand and follow your company best practices. Do not allow any employee or contractor to be targeted. Now, who would be a contractor? Could be a temporary employee. It could be a long-term temporary employee, somebody who maybe has been on the job for a year. Or it could be a short-term person, maybe somebody fixing the lights in the ceiling. In any event, that person also falls under labor law requirements. Employment discrimination of any kind is not allowed. We are all responsible to look and see and report any kind of harassment or retaliation. And again, following these policies will protect you too. I especially want to talk about retaliation. It is wrong and illegal in any form. If somebody does say, gee, I didn't like what you did, or a supervisor speaks to you about an action where another employee may have complained about you, you cannot retaliate against them in any way. Do not respond. Retaliation claims are the most prolific ever than they've ever been. So I want to talk about taking the right path and understanding the law of intent versus affect. I've been reviewing these cases for many, many years. And oftentimes, someone might come, pat somebody on the shoulder. They have it's an honorable intention. It's an attaboy thing. But another person, for their own reasons, does not like it. It is inappropriate for them, and you need to respect and honor that person. We all somehow think about the golden rule, teach others, treat others like you would like to be treated, but I would suggest what I call the global golden rule, and that is you need to treat people how they want to be treated. And legally, the law says what happens is in the mind of the beholder. It doesn't matter what your intention is. It only matters how the other person interprets it. So clearly it's better. No touching is the best policy of all. So what do you do when there's a company policy? And I want to step back for a minute and just look at some of this. What do you do when you report harassment? Invariably, in most companies, we are looking at human resources as the front line. You also can go to your frontline supervisor unless that person is in fact part of the problem. What happens at that point is each company has designated individuals. So it might go from frontline supervisor maybe to a plant manager or maybe to VP operations. and up to the CEO. There is no limit to where you can go. There is always a designated reporting chain of command. And that process is mandatory for supervisors, absolutely. If somebody makes a complaint, a supervisor must have that complaint investigator. Now the newer thing that we're looking at today is what I call the witness and onlooker responsibilities. Gone are the days that you can say, oh, I didn't see anything, I didn't witness it. People are now obligated, if they are an onlooker, to report what they see, knowing that it will follow with an investigation. I always like to talk about confidentiality a bit too, because obviously as much confidentiality will be honored as possible. But if Mary says Jack was inappropriate with her, obviously we have to talk to those people and any witnesses to see what really happened. Now clearly, in every company, there will be corrective action. Oftentimes it's a simple thing like, did you know that this was offensive? No, I didn't, and of course I'll stop right away. But oftentimes it would result in disciplinary action or in using that process. But again, in all cases, know that retaliation will absolutely never be tolerated. So, if you're a supervisor, what do you have to do? Obviously, you need to communicate zero tolerance for any kind of harassment. Watch for language that might be offensive. Gone also are the days of like the shop talk language. Nobody's probably going to make a fuss if you drop 20 pounds on your toe maybe and yelled. But if every day that language is such that it's offensive to people and those around you, you have to stop it. Even if there's a group of 4 people and you've all talked like that for 20 years, if one new person comes in and they don't like it, everyone has to stop. So supervisors are also asked to look for harassment or bullying and immediately step in to correct that. Sometimes, it's joking, sometimes people like the joking, sometimes they don't. And the rule of thumb is if you're joking with people, even nicknames, ask them, do you like it or don't you like it? And then it gives that person the chance to respond in such a way. Train employees not to stay silent. Tell them to stop if anybody offends them. It doesn't mean you have to be mean and yell and I'm going to get you. It just means you to say, hey, you know what, guys? I know I'm not very big, but I don't like it when you call me tiny. And so most people, if you approach it like that, will stop. If they don't, however, that could be a bigger problem. And again, follow up with human resources as necessary. And remember to document. This is especially important with these 2 groups. Employees in trouble, these are ones who, maybe they have some issues at work. They're already kind of have some problems, and you could see that, maybe with performance, maybe with attendance. And then there's the other group that are troubled employees. Their problems mainly are personal things at home, psychological programs. Know that you can, as a coworker, speak up. Go to HR, or if you have an employee assistance program, call them or encourage the person to call and make sure the person gets the help they need. And remember, there's always a contacted designated person for help, whether it's human resources, whether it's going through your chain of command in the organization, there's always someone you can go to for help. Now there are other New York State local protections. In almost all cases, companies successfully investigate and resolve all those issues to everyone's satisfaction. But our training does require us to tell you about the New York State Division of Human Rights and the EEOC. Also, I want to bring up the local protections. I think that's important. Should there be a serious assault or a rape, know that you need them to get the local police department involved. Now I want to talk a little bit about how these things get started and why it's so important to show respect for diversity. Know that discrimination itself against anyone is wrong, and discrimination itself sometimes breeds harassment. If you have a belief, and it could be a simple belief, might believe that, I don't know, maybe boys with red hair get mad quicker. I mean, it could be a belief I've had since I was little. But if I do know that, it could be an unconscious bias. In some cases it is. Or in my case, it might be a conscious bias. So I say, I certainly cannot let that perception continue in any way to influence workplace decisions. So know that you really need to understand and respect a really wide range of diversity in some of our beliefs, again, leading from discriminatory beliefs that might lead to harassment, which might lead to behaviors that are possibly unacceptable. Know that we need to honor every kind of diversity. And in our training, there's just a few that I want to talk about with protected characteristics. They include just a few: age, race, creed, color, national origin, sexual orientation, military status, sex, disability, marital status, domestic violence victim status, gender identity, and criminal history. So these, again, are just a few, but we all fall into one category or the other. And I would also suggest that diversity is good, should be embraced. So today, just to have a quick summary of what we've briefly gone over: how to recognize harassment as an inappropriate workplace behavior, the nature of sexual harassment itself, that harassment because of any protected characteristic is prohibited and is actually employment discrimination, that all harassment should be reported, and that supervisors and managers have a special responsibility to report any form of harassment. So these are the target items that we've gone over today. Immediately following my presentation, you're going to be asked as part of a Q&A to answer some questions and place your signature. So we have proof that you did attend this training. And I just want to close with my advice to everyone, which is to model respect every day, to honor what I call, again, the golden global rule, which is to treat people how they would like to be treated, so we can have a wonderful workplace for everyone in each and every company. So thank you again so much. It's been a pleasure to offer the program to you today, and best wishes to you all. Thank you.